What's going on, everyone? I hope you're having a good day. Today, we're going to be talking about the 7th and newest installment in the Mission Impossible franchise, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1.
None of our lives can matter more than this mission.
I don't accept that.
IMF agent Ethan Hunt, once again played by Tom Cruise, is back in action. This time, him and his team, consisting of Luther and Benji, played by Ving Rhames and Simon Pegg, Ilsa Faust, played by Rebecca Ferguson, and a thief named Grace, played by Haley Atwell, are on a mission to track down two halves of a key that controls or deactivates a program called the Entity, a self-aware AI that has gone rogue before anyone can get their hands on it and use it for nefarious, world-conquering purposes. This series, in my opinion, is neck and neck with the John Wick movies as the best action franchise of all time. It's absolutely insane to me that we are 7 movies in and they just keep getting better and better, and this series has yet to have a misstep. Unlike other franchises where the longer they go on, the more repetitive, stale, and tired they feel, Fast and Furious, these movies keep on topping themselves in terms of action set pieces and stunt choreography, while also still giving us good storytelling and character development. Since I have liked or loved every installment so far, the last one, Fallout, was amazing and is one of the best action films ever made in my opinion. I was beyond stoked for this movie. How was it? While I don't think it's nearly as good as Fallout, this movie was still a really damn good time and yet another strong entry in this consistently strong series. While I do have some gripes with some story and character choices that do kind of knock the film down a peg, this is still a great movie, one of the best of the year, the second best action movie of the year. John Wick 4 still has the crown in my opinion, and definitely worth seeing on the big screen. Director Christopher McQuarrie, who has helmed every installment since Rogue Nation and has collaborated with Cruise on many other projects as well, once again proves that, along with Chad Stahelski, he knows his shit when it comes to putting together and directing action scenes. The cinematography, courtesy of Fraser Taggart, the fight choreography, the editing, and the moments of suspense and tension are all absolutely top-notch. The 2 action scenes in particular that I really loved were a great lengthy car chase scene in Rome that is both intense and hilarious, and the final climactic battle on the train was so cool, so epic, and so intense, and I was smiling from ear to ear and was on the edge of my seat for the entire time. Tom Cruise, I mean, look, say whatever you want about him, but you cannot deny that he is a master of his craft in terms of both acting and stunt work. He is so passionate and professional and works his hardest to give movie-going audiences the best experience possible. Like, this dude is now in his 60s and is still doing all of his own stunts. Cruise is still moving around like he's in his 20s or 30s. Like, he's running, like sprinting like the goddamn Flash. The dude rides a motorcycle off a cliff and lands on a train. This guy is a fucking madman, and that's why I love him. I've always had immense respect for him as an actor and stunt performer, and this movie is no exception. The stunts are great as always, and he gives another great performance as Ethan Hunt, and has great chemistry with his co-stars. Ving Rhames is once again great as Luther. He's always great in these movies. Simon Pegg always has great banter with the rest of the cast and great comedic timing, and he also does a great job in the more dramatic moments. Like, there's one scene where he has to defuse a bomb that was super tense and even somewhat emotional. Ilsa is one of my favorite characters in this series, and Rebecca Ferguson plays her to perfection once again. She was awesome in Rogue Nation and Fallout, and she's awesome in this movie too, despite having a bit of a smaller role this time. Haley Atwell as Grace was a great new addition to this franchise. I thought she was excellent. Her character arc and her backstory were really compelling and intriguing, and her and Tom Cruise had really good chemistry together. That car chase I mentioned earlier, they get handcuffed to each other, and Grace is nowhere near as good of a driver as Ethan, so they have to escape from these bad guys and also like awkwardly try and get out and get out of and back in the cars that they steal and switch seats, and that whole scene was both intense and hilarious and was so much fun to watch. And it kind of reminded me a little bit both in terms of the action and the chemistry between the stars. It kind of reminded me of another Tom Cruise film, Night and Day, which in my opinion is criminally underrated. Pom Klementieff plays an assassin named Paris, and she was excellent here. It was really cool to see this actress in a more menacing, more villainous role after seeing her as Mantis in the Guardians movies, really showcasing her range. And I can't wait to see what they do with the character in Part 2. Vanessa Kirby, returning as the White Widow from the last movie, was fantastic here as well. And Henry Czerny, I apologize if I said that name incorrectly, returns as Kittredge from the first movie. It was great to see him back, and he does an excellent job. There's a great scene where him and Ethan are talking. That's very reminiscent of the iconic restaurant scene from the first film, even using very similar camera angles. Lorne Balfe, or Balfe, I'm sorry once again with the names, came back to do the musical score after scoring Fallout, and he did an awesome job once again. I thought the film was very well paced. It didn't feel long at all. And I liked how the exposition was delivered in a way that was interesting and compelling. And I also really liked the main villain slash MacGuffin of this movie, the entity and the key to it. Having AI as a villain in a Mission Impossible movie might sound crazy and a little bit too science fiction-y for a series like this for some people, but I personally think it worked really well here. Since AI has become quite the hot button issue at the moment, making the news and causing problems, not only does the AI program in this movie make for a really imposing threat, but also some very timely and effective social commentary about the dangers of AI, artificial intelligence, and the dangers of how it can control information and how we receive information and how we see and hear the world around us. Now let's get into my negatives. This movie is very, very good. Don't get me wrong, very, very good. But I do have some issues with it. First things first, Ilsa is one of my favorite characters in this series, as I mentioned before. And I feel like this movie really sidelined her and did her kind of dirty. Without spoiling anything, there was a choice made. There's a choice made with her character in the second act that really didn't sit well with me. Also, as much as I loved Haley Atwell's character, it very much felt like throughout the film she was being set up as the replacement for Ilsa, Rebecca Ferguson's character. And that's a real shame, because Ferguson is so good in these movies and just a great actress in general. But at the same time, I do really look forward to seeing what they're gonna do with Grace, Haley Atwell's character in part 2. Another issue I had is that while I liked the main villain, the entity, the secondary villain Gabriel, played by Ezra Morales, I found to be pretty generic and forgettable. Now, I don't blame the actor at all for this. Like, his performance was fine. I just didn't care for how the character was written, and I felt like he wasn't really given anything special to do or say. And I also thought it was strange how they retroactively gave Gabriel this backstory where he and Ethan have ties that make the rivalry more personal, despite Gabriel never being mentioned in any of the previous films, at least from what I remember. The last thing I want to touch on are some continuity issues here and there that I found kind of odd and baffling. For instance, in the beginning, we get a short little flashback showing that Ethan and Gabriel have history. And over it, we hear Kittredge say, "We gave Ethan the choice to join the IMF or spend the rest of his life in prison." If that's the case, then why was Ethan allowed to leave the IMF in Mission Impossible 3? Also in this film, Kittredge says that whenever an agent is needed, they just send word. Like, just send word? Like, does the IMF not have a headquarters anymore? Like we saw them have in the third film, and I'm pretty sure Rogue Nation as well. Like, do they just send out do they just send out those secret self-destructing messages, and all of their agents are just kind of scattered throughout the world? Also, how does the National Security Advisor, this time played by Cary Elwes, I thought he was also really good despite not being given much to do, not know what the IMF is? We saw in Rogue Nation that the government was voting whether or not to keep the IMF in business. Given what we've been shown before, the idea that the existence of the IMF is not common knowledge amongst these government officials doesn't make any sense. Also, while I am glad that Kittredge is back, I would have liked an explanation as to how he's back and how he's back in the IMF, because we haven't seen him since the first movie, and in this film he's not the IMF secretary anymore. Like, was he retired and then was he retired and then just came back, or was he always in the IMF but we just never saw or heard about him? Like, it's small little nagging issues like that don't ruin the film by any means, but really bring it down in my opinion, and really bug me. This movie is like almost perfect, but not quite. Overall, despite my complaints, this is still a damn good time at the movies, and another solid entry in this franchise that has yet to have a bad installment in my opinion. Most of the characters are well written and well portrayed, the action and stunt work are top notch, the cinematography is gorgeous, the music is great, and this film definitely gets a recommendation from me. I'm gonna give Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1 a 4 out of 5, and I cannot wait to see what happens in Part 2. Alright, that was the review. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Give the video a like if you enjoyed it, share it to get it some traction, subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you next time.